The gavel came down. The courtroom fell silent. Everyone looked to Kody Brown, the man who used to call himself the proud head of one united family. But today, in this court, his kingdom was put on trial, and reality was going to tear it apart strip by strip. This wasn't a TLC special. This was actual life. No retakes, no editing, just a fight over children, dollars, and broken vows, and the women who were no longer going to be quiet. The air in the morning in Flagstaff was thick, like the sky itself was aware that the storm brewing was not the kind that was thunderous and rainy, but the one that would alter lives forever. The courthouse loomed and chilled, its brick walls bearing decades of untold stories, its resounding corridors eager to devour today's melodrama. Within, journalists and nosy observers shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, whispering among themselves about the case. Everyone remembered the names: Kody Brown, Christine Brown, Janelle Brown, Mary Brown, and Robyn Brown. But it wasn't just about reality TV celebs. It was a war between family members. Years of tension, betrayal, and broken vows coming down to this one day. Then it arrived. The solid wooden doors at the rear of the court groaned open. Kody Brown entered. His movement was slow, labored. The man who had once swaggered across reality TV stages with such assuredness now moved with unfamiliar stiffness, his cowboy boots clomping on the highly polished floor in sharp ringing clicks. His once signature long golden curls looked dull in the fluorescent lighting, and his jaw clenched as he looked around. Behind him trailed Robyn Brown, hands grasping a fat folder of legal papers. Her lips drew into a tight line, her eyes flicking toward the front row where Christine, Janelle, and Mary sat as one. The three women hadn't sat together in years, but today they were joined, not as wives but as friends in a common cause against him. It was a moment that had the whole room leaning forward in their seats. The air between the two factions was charged, a combination of tension, history, and something that wasn't said, but was heartbreakingly obvious. There would be no turning back after today. Kody's eyes lingered on Christine for an instant. She sat upright, her posture serene but her eyes alert, the very same eyes which used to gaze at him with adoration, now gazing at him with the unwavering intensity of one prepared for war. Janelle sat beside her, hands clasped, sporting an expression that was inscrutable, yet her very presence here said it all. And then there was Mary, her face a combination of composure and quiet determination, her eyes steady and unflinching. No one smiled. The bailiff's voice interrupted the silence. All rise. Everyone stood as the judge came in, a man of authority who automatically dominated the room. His black robe moved slightly as he sat down, and his voice boomed out, deep and resonant. This court is now in session. The rustling of papers, the creak of chairs, and the soft hum of air conditioning became the only noises in the room. It wasn't a TLC show with swooning music cues. The drama here was true, raw, and playing out in real time. The judge scanned the documents before him. We are gathered here today to discuss issues of child custody, marital property division, and purported financial impropriety between the parties. Those three words were enough to get a few eyebrows raised in the courtroom. Financial impropriety, this was not a routine divorce hearing. This was money, trust, and purported mismanagement of the family's resources. Kody adjusted his coat, inclining a little towards his attorney, muttering something to himself. Robyn maintained her eyes on the judge, though her fingers drummed anxiously on the folder on her lap. Across the table, Christine's lawyer, a keen-eyed woman in a blue business suit, started sorting through her own pile of papers, pushing a yellow legal pad in front of Christine. Christine took a quick glance down at it, then back at Kody. She didn't blink. Janelle leaned in just a bit toward Mary and spoke softly to her, causing the tiniest nod from her. This tiny bit of interaction wasn't missed by the viewers. Here were three women, each with her own complicated past with Kody, now standing together in a way few would have predicted years ago. The judge went on. Before we start, I want to remind everybody that we are in a court of law. Emotions will be contained. Everything said will be said to the court, not to each other. Easier said than done. For years, this family had aired their private struggles on national television, allowing millions of viewers to watch their highs and lows. But what wasn't filmed? The secret arguments, the financial decisions behind closed doors, the whispered promises, all of that had led to this moment. The judge gestured toward Christine's lawyer. We'll begin with the petitioner. Christine's attorney stood smoothing her blazer. Your Honor, the testimony will demonstrate that my client, Christine Brown, has been deprived of her equitable share in marital property and has failed to receive the support payments contemplated at her time of separation from Mr. Brown. Additionally, we shall introduce documentation of suspicious financial transfers via accounts in the name of Mrs. Robyn Brown. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even those who had come expecting drama seemed momentarily stunned. Kody's lawyer quickly rose. Objection, Your Honor. This is a mischaracterization of the facts. The judge held up a hand. Overruled. You'll have your turn to respond. Christine's attorney continued. Your Honor, my client is not here to revisit personal complaints. She is here for justice, for her children, for financial security, and for the truth to be told. For years she helped make this family successful, on and off the air, only to be cut out of it when she decided to end an unhealthy marriage. Christine's gaze didn't leave Kody as her attorney began. No smirk, no smile, just unflinching determination. This wasn't revenge. It was accountability. The judge nodded. Very well, you may introduce your first piece of evidence. Christine's attorney reached into her briefcase, pulling out a neatly bound folder of papers, and handed them to the bailiff. As the judge flipped through them, Kody's face changed, first in confusion, then annoyance. Someone in the gallery whispered, "This is going to get ugly." And they were right, because this was not merely a battle of figures on an Excel sheet, it was a battle of history, of who had contributed what, who had received more, and who had ended up holding the bag. And as the first witness got set to testify, the truth was going to spill out in ways that would be splashed across the headlines. But for the moment, all attention was fixed on one man, Kody Brown, the man who had 4 wives, a big family, and the courage to tackle the world, was now standing against something much stronger. The truth. The judge's gaze moved towards the witness stand. Mrs. Christine Brown, come forward. The room was still, except for the soft groan of the wooden floor as Christine stood up. She didn't hurry. Her movement was measured, calculated. The movement of a woman who had been bearing years of burden on her shoulders, and was now ready to lay it down in the presence of all. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore the oath, and sat folding her hands primly in her lap. The fluorescent lighting above picked up the soft shine of her wedding ring finger, now empty. Her lawyer moved forward, her voice steady but unshrill. Mrs. Brown, please recount to the court, in your own words, why you stand before us today. Christine breathed deeply, her eyes flicking briefly towards the judges, before she looked around the room. Her eyes rested for an instant on Kody, before she turned back to her attorney. I'm here, she said, because for more than 25 years, I gave everything I had to this family. My time, my energy, my income, my love. I thought I was part of a vision that we were building together. A united, supportive home for our children. I thought that every sacrifice I made was for the greater good of that family. But when I made the decision to leave, I was cut off. Emotionally, financially, totally. The gallery was still, leaning forward at each word. Christine's lawyer nodded. Can you tell me more about what you mean by cut off? Christine's tone didn't falter. When I ended the marriage, I thought we would divide things evenly. That the money that we all made, from the show, from the business ventures, from everything that we built in between, would be split equally. But instead, the bank accounts that all of us used to live off of, suddenly became off limits to me. The credit cards were revoked. And the money that was intended to be put towards the children's expenses, it was diverted. She hesitated, a catch in her voice. It was like being erased. Kody moved uncomfortably in his chair from the defense table, his attorney speaking quietly to him. Robyn looked at Christine, her expression impassive. Christine's lawyer edged in. Mrs. Brown, Will you tell the court about your financial contributions to the family income while you were married to Mr. Brown? Christine nodded. When we were doing the show, I was on camera every day, always selling the family. That wasn't entertainment. That was a paycheck. We got paid as a family. And off camera, I was homeschooling kids, cooking dinner for 18 people some nights. That work has worth. But when you're in a marriage like ours, that worth tends to be overlooked because it's not on a paycheck. A soft buzz rippled through the gallery. And were there talks of financial openness in your marriage? Her lawyer asked. Christine's eyes widened a bit. Transparency was always guaranteed, but guarantees don't cover bills. Every time I requested to be shown the numbers, there was some excuse. The finances were being managed. The accounts were complicated. Don't worry about it. But the minute I was gone, I saw how little I really did know about where the money was going. Kody's attorney stood. Objection, Your Honor. Speculation regarding what happened to the money. The judge waved a hand. Overruled. Proceed, Mrs. Brown. Christine shifted forward in her seat, her voice increasing in intensity. I'm not speculating. I have the statements now. I've seen the transfers. Money meant for family expenses transferring into accounts in Robyn's name. Accounts that I never had access to. Robyn's mouth compressed. But she said nothing. Her attorney slid a set of papers toward the judge's bench. Your Honor, I'd like to submit these bank statements into evidence as Exhibit B. They clearly show the pattern of transfers Mrs. Brown is referring to. The bailiff collected the documents, passing them to the judge. He flipped through them, his brow furrowing slightly before setting them aside. Christine went on. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here because I've spent my life shielding this family, and I'm not going to let my children, or anyone else's, be left without the care they deserve, just because I made the choice to escape a poisonous situation. Her words were biting, each one biting deeper into the quiet of the room. Her attorney nodded slowly. Mrs. Brown, can you tell us about the moment you realized the financial situation wasn't as you thought? Christine's face relaxed for the first time. It was the week after I'd moved out. I went to the store to get groceries for my kids, and my card was declined. Not because I had spent too much, but because the account was empty. That's when I knew, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was intentional. The weight of those words hung in the air like smoke. Her lawyer paused for a moment before responding. And what do you want the court to do today? Christine stood up straight. I want the court to make sure the money we made together goes to all of the children, not only some. I want the house we purchased together to be split equally, and I want the reality of these financial transfers to be recognized. Because lying and saying they didn't occur doesn't make them disappear. The judge leaned forward slightly, his gaze locked on Christine. Mrs. Brown, do you think financial choices made subsequent to your separation were made with the intent to withhold support from you? Christine didn't flinch. Yes, Your Honor. I do believe it with all my heart. The courtroom hung in silence for a prolonged moment. Then the judge nodded deliberately and addressed Kody's side. You will have your say. As Christine exited the witness stand, she did not glance in Kody's direction. She did not have to. Her words had struck with pinpoint accuracy exactly where she intended them to. Directly in the middle of the courtroom, where all eyes could behold them for what they were. The truth exposed. And the day was just beginning. The judge rustled the papers in front of him and glared across at the defense table. Mrs. Robyn Brown, please come forward. Slowly Robyn stood up, tugging the hem of her blazer before she moved toward the witness chair. Her heels sounded softly against the wooden floor, but it felt deafening in the quiet courtroom. She kept her eyes ahead, not glancing at Christine, Janelle and Mary as she went past them. After sitting, she lifted her right hand for the oath. Her voice was subdued, nearly quivering, as she promised to tell the truth. Her lawyer, a man in a gray suit with a peaceful yet firm demeanor, moved forward. Mrs. Brown, can you tell the court why you feel the allegations reported by Mrs. Christine Brown are untrue? Robyn took a deep breath before speaking. Your Honor, I want to make one thing very clear right up front. I have never attempted to take money from Christine, or from any of the children in this household. I got into this marriage, wanting to be part of something greater, something together. I have always done what I felt was best to defend my own children and Kody's children. This has never ever been about greed. It's been about survival. There was a muted snort from somewhere in the gallery that was immediately quelled by the bailiff's stern look. Robyn's gaze grew soft, and her voice shook. When I got married to Kody, I didn't have much. I had my 3 kids from my prior marriage, and I was just trying to keep a roof over our heads. Being part of this family, it stabilized us, but it also involved merging finances. Every move we made, every account that we had, was for the benefit of the whole family. And yes, my name is on some accounts, but that's because Kody and I were paying bills that impacted everyone. Her attorney nodded. So you're telling me these accounts weren't solely for your own use? Exactly. Robyn declared firmly, her voice rising. We paid mortgages, utilities, car insurance, not for us, but for the kids and for things that benefited the family overall. Christine's lawyer stood up suddenly. Mrs. Brown, you're saying that Mrs. Christine Brown's card being declined was, what, a coincidence? Robyn's lips compressing as she replied. I'm not saying I don't approve every transaction, and I don't know why her card didn't clear, but I do know this. Kody has always made sure the kids are taken care of. Always. If something went wrong, there had to be a reason for it, and it wasn't out of malice. Christine's lawyer inched forward, her tone acidic. And yet the bank accounts reveal repeated deposits into accounts bearing your name shortly after Mrs. Brown's divorce. How do you account for that? Robyn's hands clenched in her lap. Because when Christine left, she left behind responsibilities. There were bills to be paid, houses to be kept up. I picked up more, not fewer. During that time, that money wasn't for vacations or shopping sprees. It was to pay the bills. The gallery whispered again. This time it was Janelle who ever so slightly shook her head, her lips compressing into a thin line. Robyn's attorney intervened, sensing the tension. Mrs. Brown, it's obvious there has been a great deal of emotional distress in this family. Can you explain to the court how this fight has impacted your children? Robyn's voice shattered, as she responded. They've been hurt very badly. They've had their chances at watching their father get dragged through the dirt. They've heard individuals they used to consider family members talk about him as though he's some sort of monster. And it's not right. My children didn't ask for any of it. They didn't opt to be participants in a public family spat. All they can do is hope that things can go back to normal. But I'm not sure if that's even an option anymore. The judge observed her intently, his face inscrutable. Mrs. Brown, setting aside emotions, I must confront the financial issues first. Do you recognize that funds were deposited into accounts in your name only after Mrs. Christine Brown's departure? Robyn paused. Yes, Your Honor. But just yes or no for the moment. The judge cut in. Yes, and do you recognize that Mrs. Christine Brown had no access to such accounts? Yes, but it wasn't because I was trying to cut her off. It was because they were attached to bills that needed to be paid in a hurry. And Mrs. Brown, said the judge sternly, you will have time to explain more when your counsel examines you. Robyn swallowed hard and nodded. Her lawyer continued. Mrs. Brown, is this in your mind really about money, or is there something else at stake in this courtroom fight? Robyn's eyes flashed to Christine for the first time. This is about hurt feelings, about the breakdown of a family. I think money is merely the tool being used to pay emotional dues. I see why Christine is upset. I see why she feels betrayed. But calling me a thief? That's not right. I've done nothing but attempt to help keep what's left of this family on its feet. Christine's attorney shot up again. So you're saying Mrs. Brown's testimony today was dishonest? Robyn's gaze hardened. I'm saying it's one side of the story, and the truth is rarely that simple. The courtroom appeared to hum with subdued tension after she spoke. The judge sat back a little, his gaze traveling between the two women. This is a case of facts, not emotion. Mrs. Brown, remain factual in your answers. Robyn nodded once more, but the glance she threw at Christine was pointed, a silent challenge. As she descended from the witness stand, Kody leaned forward and whispered something in her ear. Whatever it was, it brought forth the slightest smile to her lips, a fleeting moment of peace in a day filled with weighted words. But Christine, Janelle, and Mary sat unmoving. Their unity was evident, and no amount of emotional witness from Robyn was going to derail the groundwork that they had laid for today's battle. The battle lines were drawn, and the next item of evidence was soon going to make the fractures in Kody and Robyn's defense even more gaping. The judge's gavel came down once, firm and sharp, instructing the court to settle back into order following Robyn's testimony. The atmosphere in the room was heavy with the gravity of all that had just been spoken. But everyone had known that this was merely the start. The most highly anticipated moment of the day lay waiting ahead. Christine's lawyer, who had been sitting quietly piling up papers and fidgeting with tabs in her binder while Robyn was on the stand, now stood tall. The change in posture straightened the gallery. "Your Honor," she stated, her voice firm but with a quiet tone, "at this point we would like to add Exhibit C into evidence." The bailiff moved forward and took a thin, worn leather folder from the attorney's grasp. Its corners were worn, the gold-embossed clasp subtly tarnished. The kind of folder that on cursory inspection did not amount to much, but in the attorney's hands seemed to hold something potentially deadly. As the bailiff handed it to the judge, Christine's lawyer went on. "This folder contains bank statements, property transfer records and email correspondences that we believe will establish intentional financial diversion by Mr. Kody Brown, with the help of Mrs. Robyn Brown, after the petitioner's separation from the marriage." The room appeared to freeze. Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw clenching. He leaned in toward his attorney, speaking low enough for the microphone on the table to catch snippets. "They can't. No, they don't have." The judge opened the folder and started reading the papers. His brow furrowed after a few pages. Then he stopped, reading one page for longer than the others. Christine's lawyer addressed the room, not only the judge. This time, these documents chronicle the flow of money from joint family accounts taken for the sole purpose of funding all family members into accounts exclusively in the possession of Mr. and Mrs. Robyn Brown. These payments were made within weeks, occasionally days, of Mrs. Christine Brown's departure from the home. Whispers broke out in the gallery. The bailiff spoke over them, quiet in the courtroom. The lawyer continued, pushing a line of blown-up statement copies onto an easel beside the judge's bench for all to read. "This," she tapped the first page, "is the shared account with the ending 7,421, replenished by revenue from the family's reality TV earnings, product sales and business ventures together. And this," she touched the next sheet, "is the personal account in Mrs. Robyn Brown's name, ending in 9,935. On December 12th, there was a transfer of $18,500 from the joint account to the personal account. On December 14th, another $9,200. On December 18th, $12,000. These are not insignificant sums, and there are repeated transfers spread out over 3 months, adding up to more than $90,000. Everyone looked at Robyn, whose face had paled. She clamped her hands in her lap, looking down at the table. Kody's attorney sprang up. "Your Honor, this is deceptive. These transfers were for legitimate family expenditures, and we have records to substantiate it." "Then show it," snapped Christine's lawyer, her voice rising barely high enough to be commanding. "Because right now, the pattern is obvious and the timing is incriminating." The judge held up a hand. "Both of you, counsel, let's keep this in order." He addressed Kody's lawyer. "Do you have those papers ready?" The defense lawyer hesitated, glancing quickly through his own files. "Not at this time, Your Honor." That hesitation was all she needed. In the eyes of the room, reluctance was a lot like culpability. Christine's lawyer strolled back to the middle of the room, glaring at the jury box. Although there was no jury present, the gesture was dramatic and calculated, designed to make the gallery and the judge feel as though they were witnessing something pivotal happen. "This is not about bank transfers," she went on. "It's about property. A tract of land in Coyote Pass, land partially paid for by my client's money, was within 6 weeks of my client's departure signed over into a trust held by Mr. and Mrs. Robyn Brown alone. There was no consultation, no notification, just signatures and silence." Christine's lawyer struck the easel once more, but this time he produced a duplicate of the property deed, with bold letters bearing Kody and Robyn's names. Christine remained seated at her table, staring at the papers, not at Kody. She didn't have to. The facts were shouting louder than any glare could. The judge leaned in. Mr. Brown, is this true? Was the property placed in a trust under your and Mrs. Robyn Brown's control? Kody's tone was cutting. Yes, but it's not what it seems. Then what does it seem? The judge interrupted. Kody looked at his attorney, then at Robyn, then over at the judge. Looks like we were attempting to protect assets for the whole family, not us alone. Christine's lawyer jumped on it. If that was the case, Mr. Brown, why was my client's name, and your other wives' names, scratched off any documents of ownership? Kody's lips parted, then snapped shut. For once he didn't appear to have a ready response. The room's tension changed. You could sense it, the unspoken but certain feeling that the equilibrium was shifting. Christine's lawyer moved closer to the judge. Your Honor, my client is not seeking preferential treatment. She is seeking equal treatment. She assisted in gaining this money. She assisted in gaining this property. And she is entitled to her fair share. The judge leaned back, fingers interlocked, face impassive. The court will consider these papers. I would appreciate the defense having their explanation ready to present when we resume after recess. The gavel sounded once more. Court recesses for 15 minutes. As the judge left the room was filled with murmurs. Christine turned to Janelle and Mary, her lips twisting into the slightest, conspiratorial smile. Across the aisle, Kody was bent over talking in a low, intense voice to his attorney, as Robyn blinked fixedly ahead of her as if repressing tears. The folder was shut now, but its secrets had blown like a bomb, and when court reconvened, the devastation zone was going to expand. As the 15-minute recess came to a close, the courtroom was filled with the soft shuffling of shoes, the rustle of paper, and the anxious tension that makes a room feel like a pressure cooker. The coffee cups and hasty glances slid back into seats. The gallery was filled once more, reporters with poised pens ready to go. The bailiff commanded order. All rise. The judge returned with the serious gravity of one aware of the significance of his next words. He sat behind the bench, struck the gavel once, and surveyed the room. No cough, no whisper. Be seated. Kody took a breath that looked more like a swallow. Robyn folded her hands and fixed her eyes on the wood grain of the defense table. Across the aisle, Christine sat tall, shoulders back, hands calm, the kind of posture that said she was done surrendering any ground. Janelle sat beside her, eyes forward, a fortress in a blazer. Mary's expression was measured. No joy, no bitterness, just attention. The judge cleared his throat. Before we get on to closing arguments, I requested the defense to immediately shed light on a number of money transfers and a property trust made some weeks after Mrs. Christine Brown's exit from the marriage. Counsel for Mr. Brown, are you ready? Kody's attorney stood, chin raised in trained assertiveness. Yes, Your Honor. We have studied the transactions in question. Our contention is that the transfers, albeit sizable, were for family overhead, specifically responsibilities tied to properties, autos, and education expenses. Regarding the trust, the purpose was estate planning for the minor children and providing continuity should something unexpected happen. There was no ill will. At worst, there was a breakdown in communication. The judge's eyes did not budge. Do you have itemized records, receipts, invoices, any memo lines to substantiate that these monies were expended on joint obligations and not to protect assets from distribution? A pause. And then another. Yes, the lawyer said, and the syllable was a fraction too frail. He handed over a packet of papers to the bailiff. The judge flipped through, page by page. He paused on a sheet, and then another. The silence with which he did so informed the entire room what those pages didn't. He folded the packet shut and put it aside. Counsel, the records are incomplete. You have gaps in the timeline and line items that do not agree with your assertions. I also observed the lack of any communication given to Mrs. Christine Brown about these transfers or the establishment of this trust, notwithstanding her long-time contribution, financial and otherwise, to the well-being of the family. The defense lawyer nodded once. The type of nod that expresses, we hear you, but we can't repair it. The judge turned, measured and unhurried. Mrs. Brown, Christine, please stand. Christine stood, hands on table for a moment, then allowing them to drop to her sides. She did not look left or right. She faced the moment squarely. You have provided valid testimony.
backed by evidence transfers and property movements which significantly impacted your financial position after your divorce. The court acknowledges your contributions to the household revenue as well as to the everyday upkeep of the children over several years. He turned his attention to Kody. "Mr. Brown, stand up." Kody stood up. The scraping sound of his chair legs against the floor was too loud, too revealing. "Mr. Brown, this court is not here to adjudicate your program, your personal values, or the narrative your family has presented to the world. We are here to determine responsibilities under the law. What I see is a series of major asset transfers upon splitting up, minimal disclosure, and choices which consciously or not denied Mrs. Christine Brown access to money fairly regarded as marital or family wealth."
He motioned to the clerk, who handed up a ready order. The judge read from it, voice steady. First, custody-related support. The judge imposes a revised child support system based on past earnings from media deals, merchandising, and affiliate businesses. The payments will be regular, monthly, and retroactive to the date of separation. A portion will be placed in an earmarked account for the children's education and medical care, with both parents getting quarterly statements. A shiver ran through the exhibit hall. Robyn closed her eyes for a half-second, the one moment she allowed a response to escape. Second, property interests. As to the Coyote Pass parcel which was conveyed into trust, the court concludes that the mode and timing of the conveyance prejudiced materially Mrs. Christine Brown. The trust shall be amended within 30 days to reinstate equitable interests, or alternatively, the parcel shall be valued and a compensatory purchase made to Mrs. Brown for her interests, on the basis of contribution and mutual intent before separation. Kody's jaw relaxed. He glared at the tabletop as if it might present an escape. Third, accounting. Within 45 days, Mr. Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown shall give a full accounting for all transfers covered under Exhibit C, with supporting records. All funds that are not justified as mutual obligations will be subject to repayment or equitable set-off. The judge gazed from one side to the other. These orders are not punitive. They are corrective. Families, even broken ones, are still tied by obligations to their children and to equity. The court will have a special master monitor compliance. Failure to comply will have sanctions. Silence. A clear, ringing silence that pushed into each corner of the room. The judge set the order aside. We will now hear brief closing remarks. Petitioner? Christine's attorney stood but didn't stride or perform. The facts had already done the heavy lifting. Your Honor, this is about stability for the children and dignity for the parent who carried a disproportionate share of labor for years. We're satisfied that your orders reflect that. Defense? Kody's lawyer stood up. We have respect for the court. We request flexibility and timelines to obtain third-party documents and to not disrupt the minors' schedules. Reasonable requests will be entertained with the special master. The judge replied. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down, once last. No one stirred for a moment. Then the room breathed out. Reporters inched toward the aisle. Phones rose, switched to record. The bailiff's warning, no filming in the courtroom, rang off tile and wood. Christine did not smile wide or festive. She was not that kind of person. She picked up her papers, pushed them into a tidy pile, and released one steady breath, like she'd been holding it since the last snow melt, and could now release it. Janelle squeezed her arm. Mary nodded, a tight, serious bend to the moment. Across the table, Kody stood too long, like a guy who'd tarried on a ship after the rest of them had known it was time to board the lifeboat. He rested his hand on the top of his chair, then dropped it. He looked over at Robyn. She sent him a look that was supposed to be comforting, and nearly was were it not for the wire of fear beneath it. They remained silent for a while. What could they say? The judge had taken the story away from them and scripted a new ending in black ink. Christine spun to leave. And then there was that final glance. Not a stare down. Not an I told you so. Just a hesitation at the aisle, a gentle twist of the shoulders. Her eyes locked with Kody's. For one moment, the years that had passed between them, weddings and babies, and all of those dinners where the meals never ended. Moments shot in sunny kitchens, fights filmed behind closed doors, rose up and demanded to be remembered. She didn't blink. If there was a message in her eyes, It was plain. This is finished. Not our past. But this. Kody swallowed hard. He opened his mouth, then closed it, and nodded almost imperceptibly. Acknowledgement, or perhaps gratitude that somebody else had finally established the boundary he couldn't. In the hallway outside the courtroom, the corridor became a river. Microphones, lights, questions flung like stones. Christine, this way. How do you feel about the ruling? Is Kody going to comply? Is this the ultimate break? Her lawyer maintained a measured tone, providing the boilerplate. We appreciate the court's clarity and are concerned with the children. Christine smiled demurely, thanked individuals for their concern, and informed them that she was taking her children for pizza. It dissipated the frenzy. It reminded everyone this wasn't television. It was dinner, homework, bedtime, life. In the background, the defense table was still collecting papers. Robyn consulted with the lawyer in a hushed tone. He replied with a professional calm and a legal pad of things to do. She nodded too eagerly. The strategy was developing: extensions to file, records to pursue, calls to make. Crisis management masquerading as administration. Kody stood back one step, not yet prepared to step out into the cameras. He flattened his hands together as a person who is attempting to get warmth into their hands, and looked up at the seal on the judge's bench. It seemed heavier today. Perhaps it always was. He finally departed. The hallway engulfed him and then returned him to the world he could not command. One with microphones and telescoping lenses and strangers who believed they were familiar with him because they had watched him for 14 years. He stopped. Someone asked if he would say something. He shook his head. Another inquired about the trust, the transfers. He continued walking. On the courthouse steps, the sky had traded noon brightness for a softer afternoon light, the kind that flattens shadows and makes everything look a little more honest. Christine reached the curb. Janelle said something that made her laugh. Really laugh. Not the tight kind people wear when they're bracing. Mary's phone buzzed. She glanced down, shot off a quick text, lifted her head again. The three of them weren't victorious warriors. They were women emerging from a building, finally free to schedule next week, without speculation about the rules. A reporter yelled a final question. Christine, is this it? The end of the Brown family fight? She paused, just long enough for every camera to zoom in. It's the end of this chapter, she said. And that's enough for today. She stepped off the curb. Behind closed doors, the judge sat in chambers, nibbling the pen across a docket. Another case was waiting. Another family. Another iteration of the same pain. Courtrooms don't preserve stories. They preserve records. The story continues with the people who lived through it. Soon after, when the order went online, the comment spaces swelled the way they do, with advice that sounded like opinions, with sympathy that felt at times like pastime. Clips were passed around. The gavel, the easel, the line on corrective, not punitive. Experts parsed timelines. Fans took sides and then took them again the following day. The din climbed and climbed. But in a quiet kitchen somewhere, 2 plates were set on a table. A text came in. How'd it go? And the reply was simple. We're okay. That's the thing about endings. They rarely look like fireworks. More often they look like a key turning in a lock, or a door that doesn't creak for the first time in years. They look like breathing without counting. And that final glance in the courtroom, it hadn't threatened reunion or revenge. It had threatened something better than that. A boundary. A line drawn sharply enough that all could see it, including the man who'd made a lie of the line not existing. Tomorrow would introduce forms and deadlines and emails with all caps subject lines. There would be follow-ups and footnotes, and the humdrum tedium of compliance. But none of that would diminish the moment when the judge uttered the words aloud and brought them to life. Obligations, equity, children first. Ultimately, the court didn't repair a family. It did what it could do. It righted the books. And doing so restored one mother to her own footing. As the sun dipped behind the courthouse and the cameras loaded up, the steps cleared. The echo diminished. And if you listened hard enough, there was a sound we don't hear nearly enough in tales like these. A door closing gently, and another creaking open somewhere else. Because this wasn't an ending. It was a turning point, and the next act won't be penned by a judge, or a lens, or a news headline. It'll be written at a kitchen table, with a pen that never required anyone's approval. And as the courtroom emptied, one thing became clear. This wasn't the end of the Brown family battles. It was only the beginning. Because when secrets hit the light, there's no going back. The next chapter, it's coming. And it's going to be even bigger.